Hiya, pals! In this episode, Frank and I chatted with Erin Brown, a skeptical, science-based researcher turned channel, energy alchemist, and Schumann Resonance expert. We talked about how the sun's electromagnetic energy affects our emotions and physical bodies, and what ascension probably actually looks like. I'm Lauren Leon.
And I'm probably actually Frank.
We are a married couple learning how to develop our own intuition, and this is episode 69 of Clairvoyaging. Wayfeather Media presents Clairvoyaging.
What's going on?
Hello, everybody.
How's it going?
Oh, you know, little this, little that.
Little this, little that.
I decided today I don't feel well, so it's a sick day,
Lauren took a sick day today.
you know? And I pulled a card that said, rest and breathe.
It literally said that.
Yeah. And I said, I'm doing that. Thank you very much.
And she did. It's true.
Yeah.
So what's going on?
Hey, I have some updates. A couple of updates. We got some new Patreon members.
What?
Yeah. What? Allison and April.
Allison, April. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for joining. By the way, just a reminder that currently your first month of Patreon is only $2.
That's so cheap.
There are a lot of amazing extras on our Patreon page.
We got stuff.
So come join the community.
Yeah.
Guys, our documentary fundraising campaign is going strong. Thanks to you, beautiful people.
It's so beautiful.
We got some new donations from Adrian.
Yeah. Thank you.
Emily.
Emily.
Wow.
Wait. My Emily?
Our Emily. Don't claim her. If you'd like to support us and get some fun perks as well, head on over to clairvoyaging.com/support and click on the link to fund the documentary so that we can bring our crew to Austin, Texas to film with Sarah Reeves and her team at Metaphysical You.
Should be sweet.
You were told not to act like we're gonna gonna die from
my buddy Drew says to be more enthusiastic about
project.
Support the project.
Yay.
I'm thrilled. Listen,
Frank doesn't like asking for support. That is a big thing. When he pulls tarot cards, often it's about, you need to ask for support sometimes. And I'm like, yes, you do.
It's fine. Listen.
He's like, I'd rather learn how to make my own stove than have somebody come and fix it for me.
Have I watched videos on what it would take to manufacture your own toaster from scratch? Yes. But listen, did it start a fire? Yes, it did.
Frank,
no, but
it's okay.
But I want to just point out, thank you very much. This isn't your grandfather's documentary, okay? This is going to be a blast. First of all,
what's your grandfather's documentary?
I don't know. But it's going to be a good one. So
it's not your grandfather's.
Listen, here's
your
what
grandfather might like our documentary.
Oh, he probably would like it. I'm just saying, like, you know, we're behind the helm here. And I don't know if you've noticed, if you've gone and checked out the other spiritual-esque podcasts out there, we're not your grandfather's podcast either. For about spirituality specifically.
Yeah, that's true.
We are keeping it weird.
We're doing our own thing.
We're doing our own thing.
And the documentary will likely have elements of weird, just as we are.
Look, we're not in it. We'll be there.
No, but we'll accidentally infuse it with our weirdness.
And we'll probably...
We don't know how to not.
Yeah, we might end up in the background somewhere. But yeah, it'll be great.
It's going to end up being about us.
Everything is about me.
Okay, let's get to Erin Brown. She's so cool, so friendly, and has a ton of information about the Schumann Resonance, which is something we started paying attention to a few months ago.
Ever heard of it?
Yeah, a lot of people haven't. I've been the one going, oh, well, of course, you're energetically feeling a little off, maybe a little tired. It's the Schumann Resonance, and no one knows what I'm talking about. We're going to let Erin describe what that is.
Ever wonder if there was some kind of frequency that was affecting the entire collective at the same time?
Yeah.
Well, welcome to it. It's the Schumann Resonance. And
Yeah.
Erin Brown is going to expertly describe what it is. And I might want to throw in, too, that you should go check out our Patreon because there are some additional detailed slides, like a whole presentation she gives about it. So
Yeah.
jump in there.
Yeah.
And there's a couple other parts, too. This was a long conversation that we had. I love Erin so much. I start my mornings with her, literally. I talk too much. And I did it again.
I kept being like, she's got to go, Frank.
Yeah, she literally
You want to ask more questions, but she's got to go.
She literally had a client, and I was like, hold on, one more thing.
So, what do you think about aliens?
It was
no,
mean.
we didn't talk about aliens.
We didn't talk about aliens for once.
For once. He's like, can we compare notes about Star Wars?
I do that with everybody.
So, without further ado, let's get to Erin and our conversation with her.
All right, let's go for Erin.
We are go for launch.
Say the thing.
Roll the tape. Erin, thank you so much for joining us on Clairvoyaging today. We're pretty excited. I know Frank listens to or watches your videos often about the Schumann Resonance. So let's back up a little bit, and can we get some of your backstory on how you got here? Because I know you have like a nursing background. And
I do. Yeah, so I was a nurse for 25 years. I actually worked in ophthalmology, so I helped people see, did eye exams, and helped with surgeries. And then at one point I hit burnout with that, and so I left nursing and went into teaching. And I was teaching in the Department of Healthcare Simulation at a medical school here in the Chicagoland area for the last 5 years or so. That's just kind of professionally where I was. I've never been interested in Reiki or anything like that. I've been very grounded in science. All of my studies have been in, anything that is tangible. So keep that in mind.
yeah.
And then I'd say, I don't remember what year it is. I'm going to say 2017, 2018. I was diagnosed with a disease called APS, which is antiphospholipid syndrome. And what that means is that your red blood cells, the coating that's on there gets stripped away by your immune system and you clot very easily. And it can be catastrophic and it can kill you. And I was diagnosed with this because I had a series of blood clots that could not be explained any other way. So I got that diagnosis, and because of that diagnosis, my whole life changed. I had to take all this medication that made me feel terrible. I had to change my lifestyle, all this stuff. Then 2020 comes, right? The great year of COVID comes, right? Yeah. So a couple things happened in a row that were really interesting. The first thing that happened is we all got sent home from the university because of COVID. You can't teach in person, go home. And I'm sitting at home and I'm literally bored out of my mind because what am I supposed to do, right? And then one day it occurs to me, I have access to one of the greatest libraries in the country, and I've never done my own research on my disease. Well, that seemed ridiculous and I had nothing else to do. So I log into the university website and get to the library and start researching this. As a nurse, I'm well versed in what's in my chart. I know what tests I've had. I know all the results. And as I'm going through this research, I'm slowly recognizing that there is a pivotal test that was not done.
Whoa.
And it's dawning on me that I'm recognizing something that's not right. So I did the whole nurse thing. I printed out the studies. I highlighted, circled, wrote it all down. I take it to my specialist. I think it's important to note that APS is extremely rare. The specialist for this is an oncologist, not because they're a specialist in APS, but because it's the closest thing.
Yeah.
So I go to my specialist and I tell him, hey, I don't think I had this test. And he completely shut me down. And he said, nope, I'm the expert. You're going to listen to me. You do what I tell you to. Okay. So I left.
God.
As someone who teaches medicine, that's that really badly with me.
Yeah.
So of course I go, no, that's not right. So I am sitting there one day and I realize the doctor who discovered this disease is still alive and still teaching. And so I thought, well, maybe he's in COVID lockdown too. I'm going to email him. So I emailed him just to see what would happen. And knowing how doctors are, I didn't ask him to diagnose me. But what I told him was what I found, the tests I had. And then I said, if I were a friend of your daughter's, would you be comfortable with this, or would you tell me that I should probably get a second opinion? And he emailed me back and he said, I think you should get a second opinion. So I took all those test results and I went to my primary care doctor, who's always been wonderful. And at first, of course, he's like, no. I'm sure you've had this test. And he literally sat with me. It was like 45 minutes going through these records. He realized we didn't have it. He goes, I'm going to run this test. I'm sure it's just going to confirm everything. You're going to be fine. He orders the test. The next day I get a call and I can hear it in his voice. And he said, I need you to stop immediately taking this medication. I need to tell you that you have been misdiagnosed. You do not have this disease. You have 0 markers for this disease. And the medication you've been taking for the last several years, we don't know what it's going to do to your organs or to your body because it was unnecessary in your system.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Dude.
So for someone like me who was so rooted in science and medicine and who had complete faith in what science and medicine was telling me, it changed my identity when that happened, because I thought everything I knew was wrong. Everything I knew was wrong. If that's wrong, everything else is wrong. And my mind kind of went into this fold up. I don't know how else to explain it. And I kind of turned into myself. And for a good solid week, I didn't go to work. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't really leave my room for a whole week because I could not wrap my brain around how this thing that I had built my entire life around being true was wrong.
Wow.
And also, I had allowed myself to fully identify as this disease. And so when you take that away, I suddenly didn't know who I was on top of all of this. So that's where my awakening started. My daughter, literally, my teenage daughter came in my room one day and she said, have you ever thought about, like meditating? And I go, no, get out of here. And she's like, well, I'm just saying, maybe you could try it. And so I did. And it was amazing. It was the most incredible experience I've ever had. I've never had a meditation since then that's been that incredible.
Oh.
I think for someone like me who's so rooted in the physical, I needed to have a massive experience in order for me to accept it. Because I am quick to judge and discount myself. I'm quick to logic myself out of things. Oh, well, it could have been this, could have been that, blah, 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 because that's how my brain has been trained. When you're in science and you're in medicine, the job is to weed out what it's not figure out what it is, right? So that's kind of how I work through things. So that's the story, long and short, really.
What? Okay. So she said, do a meditation, and you just, you had never meditated before?
Well, I mean, I had done, here and there. Not really. I have ADD. My mind is far too busy. And the one she gave me was a guided meditation. And to this day, I don't remember who it was. And I don't remember anything they said. I just know that because I know how stimulated I am, I have a walk-in closet that's off my bathroom, off of my bedroom. So I went in the closet. First, I go in the bedroom, turned off the door, turned off the light, shut the door. Go in the bathroom, turned off the light, shut the door. Went in the closet, turned off the light, and shut the door. It was black dark in there because if anything was going to distract me, my mind was going to ping pong all over the place.
Yeah.
I sat down, I put in my earbuds, and I started listening to this. And I don't know what this person was saying or what happened, but I started seeing the most amazing colors and explosions of colors. And I felt like I could reach out and touch them with my hand.
Whoa.
And my mind could not process this. It was like watching fireworks right in front of your face. And then I saw this big, it was like an earth, right, that comes up out of nowhere, and I'm watching it. And as I'm watching it, it starts to divide like mitosis, like this. And then suddenly there were 2 separate earths, and then they started to move like this. And I saw that, and my heart rate was so fast that I went into a panic attack, and it brought me out of that experience. But it was so, even telling you can't see it, my whole body's broken out. It's it was so impactful that I had no choice but to accept it as having been real, even as the deep skeptic that I was about everything. Because how can I discount that? I saw it. I felt it. I experienced it.
Yeah.
So now what do I do? So the first thing I did was I went to a psychic in the town near me. Right?
You're all in now.
Yeah.
I'm all in because I couldn't find a reason. I spent days trying to comb through scientific reasons. I thought, well, maybe I had an ocular migraine. Ocular migraines don't look like the planet Earth. I don't know. That's not right. I I tried really hard to come up with a reason. When I couldn't, I thought I have to step outside of what I know. Now, just a little caveat, side story that'll come back interesting later is when I was in my undergraduate studies in psychology, my thesis paper was on fringe religion. Okay. And I wrote my paper on Doreen Virtue. So back in the day, Doreen Virtue is like the OG angel whisperer. She's the one who made stuff like this huge. She's part of Hay House, or she used to be part of Hay House. Now she's gone to something else, but she was huge back in the 80s and 90s. Right? Doreen Virtue, of course, with a name like that, how could you not be? Anyway, I wrote my paper on her and I ripped her apart. I used psychology and science and I literally pulled apart everything she said, right? So now here I am years later trying to figure out what's going on. And the only thing that could come to my mind is that paper that I wrote. So that's why I went to the psychic.
Okay.
I'm sitting with this psychic and it was the first real psychic reading I'd ever had, so I didn't know what to expect. I'm super hyper, sitting in a chair, bouncing up and down, like, what's going on? What's going on? And he kept telling me, he's like, you're just at the beginning. You've got to relax. And I'm just, nope, that's not good enough. What's going on? What's going on? You know, and he told me, he said, it's going to take you a few years. You have to let your brain relax. And then when your brain relaxes, what you need to know will come forward. Instead of trying to force yourself to learn something you don't need to know, what you need to know comes to the surface. He told me to calm down, take a breath, and pick one teacher and stick to that teacher until I felt like I was done with him. And I said, great, who's the teacher? He goes, I'm not going to tell you that. He goes, I want you to go on YouTube and just whoever resonates with you, start going down that rabbit hole. And that's what I did.
Who's the
We were just talking about Ram Dass with your dad.
Yeah.
That's
He's
so
amazing.
funny.
2 days ago.
His story is fantastic, but I didn't find him on YouTube. Like, interestingly, a couple days later, I'm going to visit my mom in Florida. A couple hours on the plane, I'm looking on my iPhone for an iPod for a podcast to download. You know, I'm looking for something good and murdery to listen to. And I'm scrolling through here, and I noticed that I had this big like file on mine, like a whole podcast had been downloaded, and I clicked on it, and it was a Ram Dass podcast. Never heard of this man, had no idea who he was, but it was literally not just saved on the podcast list, but downloaded to my phone.
What?
Whoa.
So, is it possible my daughter did it? Of course, but probably not. She wouldn't have thought that far ahead. So I just thought, okay, well, I'll just listen to that. So the whole ride down there, I was listening to him, and the way he speaks and the way he talks about things, he doesn't discount science, which is important to me.
Right.
Because if you come at me and tell me there's only one way that this is possible, I'm going to tell you you're wrong. There's never only just one way. It's perspective that matters. And because he brought that with him into his teachings, it made me more open to what he had to say. So he really opened the door for me. I read all of his books over the course of about 4 or 5 days. I listened to like 5 or 6 of his lectures. Like, I was voraciously consuming this information. And that guy, that psychic I saw was right. There came a day where one day I kind of was like, I think I'm done with him. I'm done with that. And I just moved on to a different teacher. It was
What's really funny? I want to point out real quick, because I just looked up Ram Dass, like literally probably on Tuesday when we saw your dad last.
Yeah.
I had noticed that I think he passed away in like 2019. So like he died, and then you immediately launched into this
Yes, I did.
experience of you. That's so funny to me.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It feels like a handoff. Like, oh, here's my collective work. No, have an experience.
She's like, I'll read all of it in 4 days.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so a couple things. I'm a really fast reader, and he writes really nicely. It's like reading butter. It's very easy to read. But the last thing of his that I saw was by accident. I was looking through Netflix for something to watch, and I happened to see a Ram Dass thing pop up, and I thought, what the heck is that? I've never heard of him having a movie or anything out, and I click on it, and it was like a 15-minute short film of him basically saying goodbye to the world. He was in Hawaii and he was floating in the water, and it was right before he died, and it was such a beautiful fitting end. I felt like he said goodbye to me, and then just I was ready to go on, you know.
How cool is that?
That's beautiful.
But I'll always regard him as my first and biggest influence ever in this environment.
So who did you learn from next after that?
So then I found a woman named Christina Lope. She's on YouTube. It's Lopes, and I liked her because she's an ex-doctor who went through a very disruptive spiritual awakening, and which included a terrible divorce. She left her practice and everything in the US and moved to a whole nother country and just reinvented herself.
Wow.
And
Whoa.
she has a very clear way of explaining things like frequency, harmonics, vibration, because she also incorporates that scientific side. For me, and I think for a lot of people, your brain tends to work one or the other way. You either tend to have a structured, logical brain or one that's more open to perspectives. I call it the spaghetti side, right? Part of the work of being human is learning to balance those two sides. But most of us are either in one side or the other.
I'm all
For
spaghetti.
people, right. And I'm all structure, right? So for people like me, reading someone like Eckhart Tolle doesn't work because his concepts are very etheric in nature. The way he describes him are very etheric in nature, and it doesn't give you a whole lot of solid to hold on to.
Oh, yeah.
For people
Okay.
like me, I need someone who gives me the solid to hold on to, and then I can expand from there. I'm not someone who tends to just take things because I said so. I've never been one of those people. But if you can explain to me why something's happening and I can connect the dots myself, it makes it much easier for me to embody that understanding as my own instead of trying to fit your teaching into my vernacular.
That's my scientific minded brother. he would be very much in line with how you learn and process things.
Right. I was going to say you're a distiller.
Yes, I'm a distiller or a translation.
I'm a distiller.
Yeah, I can, for some reason, it feels silly to me to try to discount the things that we already know. Like science is real. It's real. It's just incomplete. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And science is slowly catching up with the spiritual side of things. Like I literally just posted an article this morning on my Patreon channel about a new experiment that's being talked about that's literally proving that consciousness and quantum entanglement are part of the same thing. And when they prove that the implications for that are astounding, because that's the idea of your higher self, that there's a piece of you here and a piece of you here, and you are learning and spinning at the same rate, right? That's what that's telling you. Like it's amazing to me that this is where science is, but it also is amazing to me that nobody's talking about it.
I think there's a lot of like pushback because people don't understand, because science is stepping into the spiritual in terms of like things don't work the way we thought they work. It is not everything is black and white now, and
right.
Just the very concept of quantum entanglement is I don't want to say a leap of faith, but it requires a little bit of how does that work? And we can see it. We can see that quantum entanglement actually exists, but it's hard to explain. We don't know why, right?
Yes,
so that leap of faith is really killing some people.
It really is. And, I saw that in medicine a lot. At the university where I was working, I worked with nothing but PhDs and MDs. So a very educated crowd. Also an aging crowd. So a lot of the people who were teaching are professors who have aged out of practice. They no longer want to be in daily practice, so they're teaching. So a lot of the professors were older. And that doesn't make them bad doctors, but they're very stuck in their way, because when they were coming up, what they were taught was the philosophy of the doctor is right. The patient doesn't know anything, and the doctor is right.
Yeah.
Because when they were coming up, Google and all of these things didn't exist. And so to keep people safe, instead of going outside and plucking some root out of the ground, you don't know what it is, they taught people to just trust your doctor. But times have changed. And so the teaching philosophy of medical students needs to also reflect that. I actually saw that a lot at the school where I was. And it started, especially with the class that came in right before I left. I had a lot of students who were coming up to me and asking, when is it appropriate for me to suggest acupuncture rather than medication? When is it appropriate for me to help someone with their anxiety by teaching them meditation rather than giving them a Xanax? Where is the line? Like, they're really starting to try to feel that out. And there's also this new, it shouldn't be, but this newer push to teach these incoming doctors that while they may one day be an expert on a disease or a process, and I hope they are, they'll never be an expert on a patient. Never. The patient is the expert on the patient. And if you will just ask Just ask the questions. Like, as someone who has chronic migraine, I can 100% tell you how often I get them, how bad they are, what helps, what doesn't help, what tests I've had, how long I had them. I can give you all that information, and it takes away all the unnecessary testing and speculation if you just listen. That's not to say that the patient's always going to know what they're talking about, but they can at least give you that, and that gives you somewhere to start. And it's nice to see that. It's just the scientific community at large is like that. And I hate to say it, but until the older generation sort of starts to step away from the control of how science is processed, the younger generation is not going to be able to bring forward all the stuff they're discovering with the new technology and stuff like that.
I think everyone has had an experience of a doctor who doesn't listen.
Oh my God.
It's like the thing, the amount of times I've been told like conflicting things, or told that, for
You're
example,
a hypochondriac?
Yeah. I've been told
His doctor would literally say, like, you're a hypochondriac.
I'm like, dude, no, I don't feel good. And like, or I have a history of like gastro issues, and to the point where I had to have a surgery to fix. I'm not going to get into it. I had to fix my esophagus. But to that doctor, I was like, hey, I'm willing to do like massive like diet changes, and I've started doing this a diet called FODMAP, which is like avoiding fructans and all various sugars and other things. And he was like, "Oh, well, I can tell you to like change your diet, but you're not going to do it." I'm like, "No, bro, I've been doing it for 10 years already. I don't think you understand. Like, why aren't you helping?
You don't know me.
Why
That's
aren't you
so weird. That's so weird."
And of course, that was my surgeon, right?
Right.
So like having doctors who don't listen or always know better, like has to die.
There's an arrogance to it. There's an arrogance to medicine and science in general. I think a lot of scientists, and this isn't necessarily to judge them in any way, but it's just the way science works, is if you can put your theory out to peer review, and your peer review comes back and says, yes, this checks out, we tend to stop exploring further explanations to that. You know what I'm saying? When that shouldn't be what it is. Yes, you know that much to this point, but what comes after that? The stuff in Egypt is a big piece of that, like a whole example of that. They're saying they're finding all this stuff in Egypt, which is wonderful. I'm all for it. I think they're right. But the things we have to remember is this is not yet peer reviewed, right? So we have to be careful. We can't make these big assumptions about things. But what they said in the actual study made sense. Like, I went and read the study. They are not speculating that there's cities under there. They're saying they don't know what's under there. They can just see it. And I think what happens is sensationalism runs away with stuff, and then people get garbled in what actually was said and what wasn't said,
Yeah,
completely.
So when science and hopeful thinking interact, it's TikTok content.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then people turn it into fact.
Dude, I deeply hope there's like insane stuff under the pyramids, but I'm also like, let's wait a minute. Okay.
Well, here's the thing. So, if what they're saying is true. So when I read the study, the thing that stood out to me as a Schumann girly, right? There's a paragraph down in there that talks about how the way the pyramid is positioned, and if this is a resonance chamber, it could actually be pulling off of the Schumann resonance, harnessing the energy of the Schumann resonance and creating a reverberation chamber and then producing energy. So then I thought, well, is that like electricity, like light? That seems weird to me. So I went to ChatGPT and I gave the study to ChatGPT and I said, let's just say this is all proven to be true. Let's just propose. If that's the case, what type of energy would this produce? And what ChatGPT told me is it's more of an ambient energy. So think of things like refueling your Tesla, or med beds, or walking through something that has an energy field, or healing. It really brought up that it would have a lot to do with healing. And then it throws in this nice little tidbit that said, oh yeah, the kind of energy that these UAPs been seen around New Jersey have been reported to use, that kind of energy. And I thought, okay, here we go. So it really opens up the field to 100 different things. But when you get down to the science of it, it's very exciting, but unproven as of yet. Right. So I think we should all approach it with caution, but excitement. Just because it hasn't been proven doesn't mean it's not true.
Yeah.
Right.
The amount of things that are coming up lately, and then again, it could just be my TikTok echo chamber, but the amount of things coming through lately of people saying, hey, it really seems like some ancient civilizations may have tapped into having like their entire city be built on resonance. Right. And even to the point where you look at the old cathedrals and stuff and you see like that their decor and decorations seem to be
the grand flower, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about? The big flower they all have is like a cymatic pattern.
Yeah. which for those of you who don't know, that's like when you, I don't know if you've seen those fun experiments, to the listeners, where like people put sand on like a plate or something, and there's like a speaker underneath it that plays a frequency, and the frequency actually shapes a pattern in the sand. They're saying that like cathedrals might have tapped into that type of thing. So like basically the decorations and the windows of cathedrals are basically telling you exactly what frequency that cathedral is tuned to.
That's cool.
So in an event where there's a bunch of people singing a specific like tune or harmony and or frequency inside that cathedral, it could have been built for that, and like people go there for that specific frequency or that specific healing, or that, like, I don't know, spiritual experience, whatever it might be.
Right.
Let's take a couple steps back here. Sorry.
I'm going to be the linear one.
Go for it.
Sorry. I have a question about the compare, like when you went back to thinking about Dorian virtue. Dorian virtue.
Mm-hmm.
Did you revisit that paper once you started?
I couldn't find the paper, but what happened was I ended up opening a brick and mortar wellness center with a friend of mine. And on opening day, a friend, like a mentor of mine, comes in, and this is before I put all together the whole Dorian virtue thing. I'm still sort of going, oh, that's interesting, but not really paying attention. And just to give an extra push, right? So he comes in and he's got a bag full of books, and I have not told anyone about this story at this point. Nobody. He goes, hey, I want to donate some books to the store, for your library. Or whatever. I'm like, okay, great. And I open them, and every one in that bag was a Dorian virtue book. Every single one. So that's for me when the moment was very full of gravity. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Look what I've become.
Yeah. I feel like I have egg on my face, and she literally is laughing at me from wherever she is right now,
That is so funny.
I don't remember what I said in my paper, but I do know I got an A on the paper, and that my psychology professor was very impressed with the tools I wielded, but I'm sure I was not kind and all kinds of stuff.
Oh my gosh. That's very funny. I want to know, I want to see your transition from going like, oh, I'm studying this, I've opened a wellness center, to like, how do you go from like, I think there might be something more, to I'm going to teach this now?
Right. So that's where the Schumann comes in, really.
Okay.
So once I go through this awakening experience, I don't remember exactly the time that passed, but I was having lunch with a friend of mine who was a meteorology student. And I was remarking to him how I think I made a joke about PMS or something. And I was like, the moon's always affecting me. And he said something like, have you ever heard of the Schumann? I'm like, what is that? And he said, well, it's this, blah, blah, blah. And he explained it to me, and he showed me on his phone this app. And he goes, so how are you feeling today? Or he said something like that. Whatever the conversation was led me to make a connection. So the Schumann Resonance is a set of extremely low frequency ELF electromagnetic waves that all naturally occur between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere. It's like a sponge or a cushion around the Earth, right? The main resonance of this is 7.83 hertz. It has harmonics, so it goes up and it goes down, but the basic harmonic frequency of the Earth itself is 7.83 hertz based on all this energy. Mm-hmm. So I download the app, and as a scientist, I always want proof. So I started to keep a log, and every single day for a full year, I wrote down what I observed on the graph versus how I felt versus the next day. And every single day I wrote that down. And then once I did that, I took that, because I was still teaching at the university. I took that to the university where we have an AI engine, and I plugged in all these numbers into this statistical thing, and it spit out statistics. And sure enough, there was a bell curve. And I thought, well, that's interesting, because when that happens, that's statistical significance. And in science, that means you have something. You have a theory, you have something you can work with. Mm-hmm. So that, after I started doing all that observations, when I really started to dig into it, because I really didn't expect to see any correlation. I didn't expect to see the pattern, right?
And this is this is emanating from the Earth?
No. So these frequencies are produced by lightning strikes. They're produced by tectonic plate movement, and they're produced a lot by CMEs from the sun. So when we get big solar flares and ejections of plasma and protons, that all hits our atmosphere and kind of gets stuck in the ionosphere and sort of bounces around like this. And it starts out strong and then it loses its, and then it dissipates. So it's kind of like a cushion for the earth. The Schumann resonance is the measurement of that energy. So it's not actually the Schumann, it's just energy. The guy who discovered its name was Schumann, so that's why it's called that. But this is a daily measurement of that energy. There are many different aspects to this. They measure ELF, ULF, all these different ones, and there are many different reporting stations all over the globe. There's one in Italy, there's one in Russia, there's one, I think, in Denmark. They're all over the place. Each of those stations measures a different aspect of that resonance, right? The only one that I really pay a whole lot of attention to is the one in Russia. The reason is because that's the one I started with, that's the one I studied, and that's the one I feel most comfortable with. But that shows ELF, that's electromagnetic, extremely low frequency, which I love their naming, extremely low, ultra low. Like, who came up with that? How much do you pay for that? Right? Like, come on.
Schumann.
When you think about it, so if the main resonance is 7.83 hertz, right? The reason that made me so interested is because studies have shown that human brain waves, especially alpha and theta, naturally synchronize with that frequency. So this links the Earth rhythm, the 7.83 hertz, the cycles that the Earth goes through. It links it to things like your circadian rhythm, how you sleep, your awareness. All this gets linked to this. It's all affected. And then the other thought I had was, well, our physical bodies are electrical in nature. Our heart and brain works on electricity, basically. And we are part of a planet that's being bombarded by the electricity that's kind of bouncing around. It was logical to me to assume that it would affect us as electrical beings in some way, especially because the ground is oppositely charged, right?
Yeah.
So if the ground is oppositely charged than us, then it stands to reason that we would be more in tune with that. So that's kind of where I started. So after I get all this data, as a scientist, I'm looking at all this, thinking I'm losing my mind. And I thought, well, what would a scientist do, right? So the next thing a scientist does is put it out for peer review. So then I thought, I'm just going to put it out on TikTok because it honestly felt safer than YouTube because there were less doctors following me on TikTok than YouTube. So I put it out on TikTok just to see what would happen. Because again, I'm still teaching at the university at this point.
Right.
Put it out there, and the response was overwhelming. It was unbelievable how many people started emailing me and reaching, oh my God, this is so right, this is so right. So I just kept doing it every day because if it helps somebody who's not sure what in the world is happening right now feel a sense of control, then it's worth every ounce of work that I've done for it. Because when I was in that state, I hated that feeling. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to help myself. It's very uncomfortable to feel in that state. So any way I can help, that's how this is the easiest way for me to do it, I think.
So you started recognizing like physical like responses that were in line with
what showed up on the graph.
So
right.
The graph kind of looks like, what does that graph look like?
It's almost like if you've seen like a Richter scale, almost like a chart for earthquakes, but it's in light instead of lines.
Right. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, it's in frequency. So the color is on the frequency.
Okay. First, I'm going to ask you this very macro question. Why is this happening? What are we supposed to do with it?
Well, I think we as humanity have reached a tipping point where we need to make a decision. We need to decide if we're going to stay very material based, which is where we've been, or if we're going to allow ourselves to expand into a place of balance where we find the balance between the material and the non-material, the etheric, right? Something I like to point out to people when they dismiss the idea of Atlantis or any of those things, if we had a cataclysmic event right now, all of our technology disappeared, they would be looking at us exactly the way that we look at these places that we think didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
So this is, to me, just a repeated cycle that comes up over and over and over in Earth history, not necessarily humanity, but Earth history, because everything in nature tends to have that spiral pattern, right? That's the Fibonacci sequence, right? So until we learn the lesson, we are doomed to repeat the problem, right? So I think we've come to the nexus point again as humanity on Earth to decide which way do we want to go. Do we want to go one way where we stay rooted in I only believe what I can see and there's black and white issues and everybody one or the other, or am I going to be open to the idea of perspective and I still have more to learn and science is not complete and that there's more to the story? Because when you pull away from that, they're very different realities. They're very different realities. So
Yeah.
I think why all this stuff is happening, which coincides, just so you know, with us reaching the solar maximum right now for our sun.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think everything's happening all at one time very purposely. I think there's no denying what astrology is telling us is going on right now lines up perfectly with what the Vedic calendar's been telling us, lines up perfectly with all this stuff in the Mayan culture, lines up perfectly with the Hopi prophecy, lines up perfectly. I mean, you can go down the list.
Yeah.
And it's uncanny how many things literally feel like they're coming together. I mean, how many times do we have to be told we have a tail before we turn around and go, shit, I have a tail? Like how many times do they have to tell us that? Like literally all of the prophecies, if you just sit down and look at them, there are so many common threads that are happening right now. People talk about the return of Christ. This is the return of Christ, my friends. This is the return of Christ consciousness. You're looking for a person. It's not a person. It's a consciousness. It's an awareness that we all have everything we need within us. And when we turn within and listen here, we don't need this out here. But all the people that have made their life on controlling all of this out here don't like that,
Yeah.
and I don't know that they do it maliciously. I think some people do, but I think just out of a sense of losing control that there's a lot of pushback from the other side. And that's what makes the divide so great.
So this is like in terms of, and for anybody who doesn't know, the solar maximum is the sun is having more, the sun's acting up in a way that it's supposed to, but it's doing it way harder these days. It
is. It's having a lot of tantrums. I'm not a geologist, so I don't know the actual numbers, but we are right in the middle. And I will tell you that our solar maximum, I know for a fact, where we are right now is way stronger than they ever anticipated it or what they predicted it to be. It's like 50% stronger.
Yeah. It's throwing a lot of tantrums. And it's funny when you think about like ancient civilizations and stuff. We're really, everyone thinks, this, how can all this ever go away? We're really just one solar flare, one real good solar flare away from losing everything.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah. And so it's not out of reason to like say, we can lose all of this. And what would you choose? If we're set back to the Stone Age. And I sometimes wonder if that's what all of this would be leading up to, is we need to get into a place where we're okay with that. And if we're so attached to this material world, like what kind of spirituality can you possibly have?
Right. I think yes and no. I don't think we can really anticipate what it really means because I don't think our brains are smart enough. But to me, it's the idea of choosing where I'm paying attention, creating my own reality. So Bashar says it all the time that there's two different realities and they're pulling away from each other and they're like trains moving in opposite directions. Just because the train's moving away from you doesn't mean you can't see it. But a perfect example of a different timeline, like this is a freaky story. You guys, this is awesome. It just happened.
Yes.
You're the freaky exclusive. Okay.
Yes.
So, I was invited to go bowling with some friends last weekend and I was like, sure, let's go bowling. So my husband and I go. And we're getting ready in the garage, and I'm sitting in the car. I'm like, what is taking him so long to get in the freaking car? And I look over, and he's got a bowling bag in his hand. He's holding it up. He goes, do you want this? And I go, what is that? He goes, it's your bowling ball. And I go, what? He goes, it's your bowling ball. And I go, what are you talking about? He goes, it's your bowling ball. It has your bowling shoes in it. Do you want it? And I'm like, I don't have a bowling ball. He's like, we were in a league for a year. We were in a league for a year. And I'm looking at him going, oh. Like I had zero recollection of that until he said it and pulled me out of where I am all the way back there. I had zero memory. Would have walked into that bowling alley, would have never thought about it, never connected to that, nothing until he pulled that out. And that's like the other timeline. Look do you remember this? Now, when I put those bowling shoes on, they were a full size too big for me.
What? Oh my gosh.
A full size. And he's looking at me going, those have to be your shoes because they're a size 7. I'm a man. I wear a size 12. They're not mine and they're purple. So they're definitely yours. But I'm sitting sitting there and I'm going, well, how is it possible? And he goes, well, maybe you were wearing really thick socks. It was winter. And I'm like, no, that's not what's happening here. So I can't explain how my foot is a full size smaller than it was when I got those shoes. I can't explain how I had zero memory of that until he literally brought it up. And even now, when I think about it, it's so foggy. It's like trying to remember a dream. It's like I can't remember the details. I can't remember anything specific until he says it, and then it comes back. But that's kind of what I mean when you're creating your own reality. That where I was at that time in my life is so removed from where I am now that it's not even part of me anymore.
Right. So was that like years ago?
Yeah. So he said it was when I literally don't really remember. I know my kids were little. So my daughter is almost 23. My son's 18. And they were small enough that they had to go with us everywhere. And my son was a pain in the butt. So he was probably 5 or 6 years old. So it's been at least probably 12, 13 years. And it's very true. I'm a very, very different person now than I was then. And it's like a whole shift to a different timeline.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Is there any, first of all, what's funny is that, like, I know you've told me before, like when women get pregnant after they have kids and stuff, if anything, their feet get bigger.
Yeah. My foot got like half a size bigger.
Yeah. Like that's a thing. Does it make you feel good at all to know that somewhere on the timeline there's an Erin who's got giant feet and she's just throwing turkeys down the lanes all the time?
Well, it makes me feel good to think that she had the fashion sense to get those adorable shoes because they were really, really cute. And it felt better than putting my feet in the bowling shoes, that from the place. I just stuffed the back of them with a sock. I mean, it was big enough that I could stuff a little sock in there to hold my foot.
Crazy.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
So let's hold on a minute now. So earlier you were talking about how the Schumann sometimes expects us, if you can personify it that way, it hits us with an energy and we're supposed to meet it as much as we can. Is that indicative of like a quantum jump in some way into like a new version of ourselves, or what exactly is it, so that you are experiencing something like a Mandela effect in that capacity, where you have to remember something that you almost have no personal experience with?
Yeah. So what I have found is the more aware you are, the more awake you are, the more conscious choices you make, the more you move away from behaviors that were prominent when you were unconscious. So for example, I no longer drink alcohol. I no longer eat meat. And these were things that just sort of happened very naturally, not because I felt like, oh, they're terrible. They didn't feel, if I ate a hamburger, I didn't feel good after I ate it. So I stopped eating it. It wasn't anything monumental, but over time, I slowly started to watch these things fall away, and I sort of entered into this whole new state. When I entered into this place where I'm focused more on intuitive health and intuitive eating and all these things, I started to notice that the stuff like bowling and all the things that meant a lot to me just don't resonate anymore. So I don't think about them. I don't draw them into my timeline. And I see this happen with a lot of people. It's a state I like to call compression. I kind of borrow that term from Bashar, but it's, your whole life, you're told, ask someone else. You're never told to ask you. You're never told to trust yourself. You're told to trust your doctors, your parents, your teachers, your lawyers, but never you. And when you come into awareness and you come into awakening, you're finally being told and given permission to ask yourself. So your energy, instead of being outward facing, turns inward facing. And in doing that, it pushes away, kind of like putting a drop of dish soap in a dirty sink. It pushes away all the stuff that doesn't resonate with what's trying to propagate inside. And so you tend to go through this phase where you sort of jettison a lot of stuff. And a lot of people equate that with a timeline jump or a quantum jump because you feel like a different person because you're not around there. And it is, and as far as I'm concerned, but it's not about changing your timeline. You're changing your timeline all day long. It's just staying more consistently on the one that feels better. If that makes sense. I feel like I kind of talked in a circle on that one, but I hope it made sense.
No, I love that idea of ask yourself, though. Like, that just made me think of when I was a kid. I've told you this before, Frank, that like being told sometimes, like, I know you better than you know you.
Right.
Was like, don't like thinking about it now, I'm like, that's nice. Like it's a nice intention, but it's also like deeply like removing your own power, without, it wasn't like a malicious thing to say, but it really does, like, that kind of just removes your own personal power.
And that's something that we're taught in our current society over and over and over again. When you go to the doctor, they don't ask you, what do you think is wrong? They tell you what they think is wrong,
Right.
and that's part of the problem. Like there's a whole lot of that going on with everyone.
Yeah. I mean, just the nonstop, like, self-doubt just perpetuated by every single adult as you're, growing is pretty.
Yep.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, nothing. We say by adults, and I'm still encountering people who feel like adults to me telling me what the hell to do. We often talk on the show about the guardrails set up for like what we're and breaking out of that mold of what we're shown reality is supposed to be and what the mold we're supposed to fit into, right? And like checking on the Schumann resonance, it seems like these are moments when we have a stronger ability than usual to step into our own.
Yes, it has the potential to give you a reason why, so you don't feel so out of control. And when you see those big white pushes on the Schumann, it's not ever going to be forced on you, but it's one of those things. Hey, I have the opportunity to open up to this, and if I let go of my disbelief and everything, you have to trust that it'll settle in. And for some people, it affects them dramatically, and some people it barely affects them, but you're getting effect all the time from it. It's just being open to accepting it. That's all you have to do. People ask me all the time, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? Nothing. You don't need to do anything. You need to stop doing something. Stop.
Yeah.
Like a river going in your direction. The problem is the rocks that you put in the way. So when you move the rocks, it can reach you. You don't have to go get it. It's coming to you. It's matching of frequencies. It's literally a matching of frequencies.
And so what are like when you see a big like streak or a big white energy, like what are the things to kind of pay attention to in your body? Or like we have little kids. Sometimes they're like, there's always something that they're acting up about, but sometimes it's like this whole house has big emotions, or like everybody here is exhausted and there's not a real explanation for why or whatever it is.
Right. So on the days with those big white patches, I always encourage people to try to do something creative in nature, because you are being offered the opportunity to embody a higher frequency. And in order to do that, when you create, I mean, if you think if creator is all of the universe, the act of creating is channeling that energy through yourself, right? So the best way to access this energy is to go into some sort of state of creation. That doesn't mean you have to paint a work of art or you have to create a Picasso, but do something that helps you feel creative. For me, a lot of times it's organizing my kitchen or cleaning my house. That makes me feel good. But that's you letting that energy into your system. It doesn't have to be defined about what anybody else's definition of creative is. It's for you, right?
Okay.
For little kids on days like that, I like to call that a yaya day. You got to go outside and run and jump and scream and swing and be loud. Get all your yayas out, because little kids don't have a lot of filter. So when this big energy comes in, it makes them very energized and they don't know what to do with it. As adults, we know we can do something creative or whatever. As kids, we need them to say, hey, let's go to the park. Let's go play air guns, or let's go have a water gun fight or something. Let's go get out of the house, do something like that. On the days with the red energy, that is release days. That's when your energy is being invited to release anything you've been working on that to this point is no longer serving you. So those are the days where people tend to be more tired, more reactive, more emotional. On those days, I tell people, just listen to your body. If you sit down to work and you are forcing it, then you need to walk away from it. If your body's tired, take a nap. If you feel like you need to have some macaroni and cheese, then you need to have some macaroni and cheese. Just stop trying to fit into somebody else's definition of self-care, right? Do something for yourself that feels good for you, as long as you're not hurting anybody else.
Yeah, I love that.
Those are the two biggest pushes that we get. Integration days they spread out, they're in between, and everybody, the symptoms, the experiences are all over the board when it comes to that. The biggest thing is when you feel inspired, do your best to follow up on that inspiration in the moment if you can, even if it's just write it down. Because when you are receiving inspiration from source, you're not meant to be a sponge. You're like a straw. It's meant to come in and go out, just like an emotion is meant to come in and go out. You're meant to experience and release. So when you get an idea, write it down, catch it. Even if you can't follow through it in that moment, catch it, write it down. I have a book, a little purple book right here. I literally carry it everywhere with me. I will open this book and read something I wrote in here 6 months ago. Oh my God, that's such a great idea. I should do that.
Yeah.
But you got to catch it. You got to catch it.
Like, but as you're seeing like a streak or a color, it's
like how long does it last?
Yeah. Or like now for the next, like the whole day, I should be or like whatever.
Well, you just do it until you feel better. You do it until you feel like you've reached that, kind of like when you take your kids to the park to get all the yayas out. You let them run until they finally feel like, okay, I got it out. And then you get back to your normal thing. But if it comes up again, then you get back into a state of creativity. If there's a day with big white energy and you literally feel nothing, you don't feel out of place, nothing feels off, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you or that you're behind or anything. It just means that there's nothing that you need to embody right now.
Yeah, I've taken that to mean like I'm in alignment with whatever this is.
Okay. It's kind of like going to a buffet, right? You have the option, but you're never forced. And sometimes you're full when you get to the buffet, so you just move on. But sometimes you're starving, so you take all of it, And it's not necessarily a conscious choice. It's based on your energy, where you are, what you're working on, all that sort of stuff.
Actually, Lauren, this is a really good opportunity because we're lucky that we even have these graphs. People didn't used to. And really, we're kind of trying to tap into the energy of the collective at any given moment, right? Mm-hmm. For you in particular, because you struggle sometimes with like the interoception of your own like emotions and feelings. It's great to like. It would be a great practice for you to kind of assess your feeling and how you're feeling that day, and then refer to the graph and like see what's going on, or just check out Erin on TikTok.
Yeah, and I always I want everybody to do that because I can only offer you how I feel. I only have one perspective. And it's going to affect all of us differently. Just like if I take penicillin, you take penicillin, they're going to affect us differently. Even if neither one of us is allergic, cellular level, it's going to be different. Right. So energy is the same way. It's going to affect everybody differently. The reason I put that out there is to show you that there is a correlation. That if you pay attention, if you start paying attention to this, you can see patterns. So that now when I open the graph, if I see a big red patch coming in, I know it's not a good day to call my sister. You know what I mean? Like I can sort of do stuff out from that, and it's not that the graph is telling me that's how I should feel. It's me looking at it and going, I might not be feeling so talkative today with her. So, it's kind of like, it's like a horoscope or something, but it has more of a grounding in something tangible like science, like frequency and the movement of your brain and the oscillations of your energy and all that.
We never got back around to, and I wanted to ask you, did you figure out what the thing with the clots was?
No, never had it again.
It went away.
Went away. Never had it again.
Do you ever think that sometimes you get physical manifestations of dissonance that you are putting yourself through?
100%.
Okay. And then when you came around to learning all this, it went away?
Yes and no. I think that the blood clots were probably part of some energetic block. But I think for me, because I was so rooted in science, it took me losing my faith in science to look at something outside of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
I used to suffer from debilitating panic attacks, and turns out like my intuitive gifts are in the form of feeling. And I was on Prozac and stuff, and that was the only way I was able to survive for a while. And I don't know if Prozac did some rewiring, but since I've been off now for like months, and I'm beginning to realize that I'm able to feel more of people around me, and no panic attacks. So I don't know.
Yeah,
anyway.
No, you're right. You're right. And you know what it is. That's the panic comes from not knowing what it is.
The panic comes from
now that you know what it is, the panic is not part of it anymore because you're able to recognize it doesn't necessarily belong to you. Before, you were embodying it as belonging to you. Now you know it doesn't. And so you're able to remove yourself a little bit from it and give yourself some buffer space. That's all you're doing is just recognizing self.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah. So many of my panic attacks, I'd be looking at Lauren, I'm like, I don't know I'm not thinking of it, and there's nothing bothering me, but I'm having a panic attack.
Yep.
So being able to like separate that and know what's going on. Also just giving myself time to like isolate and like recharge.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
Yes. I have days, I call them my fold up days. I have whole days that I just don't do a thing because it is a lot of energy expenditure. What I do, I'm performing basically for 2 hours straight on TikTok. And then I have a whole afternoon of client after client after client. And so I'm constantly going. So every once in a while, I'll take an entire day off and I literally will do nothing. I will watch the worst TV I can find, like 90 Day Fiance bad. Like I'm all in the drama. Okay. And then I will eat all kinds of like macaroni and cheese and ho-hos and ice cream, but I will give my body the chance it needs to sort of pull all of my energy back. And then the next day I'll always feel fine and I'm able to get up and move around and do whatever. But I have to give myself permission to have those days. I used to push through them and it would elongate it. Instead of being one day, it would be weeks. But if I just listen, I can sit down and deal with it and then come out of it and be fine. And I think that's part of our problem as society is we want instant gratification and instant fix, but sometimes you need to feel your feelings.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we have taught ourselves that there's merit in the pain.
Right.
Yeah.
And that
well, emotion is energy in motion. It's meant to visit, release. We as humans visit an emotion that we don't like. We go, I don't like that. And we grab it and we shove it down. We go, stay right there. And we literally push it down into us. We didn't release it. But if we had just done what we're supposed to do, feel the sadness and let it leave our system instead of saying, I don't want to feel this way. Just feel it. Just feel it. It will leave. It will go away. It's just doing its job. It's your indicator of where you are in alignment with whatever it is that's happening to you. If someone dies and you're feeling fear, you feel the misalignment for them not being there and you being here. That's all you're feeling, right? If you have fear around taking a test, you're feeling the misalignment between your higher self knowing you'll be fine and your lower self not feeling that confidence. That's all you're feeling. And if you can just let yourself feel it and walk through it, you can let it go instead of squashing it down and pushing it into your cells and having a physical manifestation later.
You're talking about how your intuition comes through a lot in visions and stuff. And earlier you had mentioned that you were in a meditation and you received some information that way.
Yes.
How do your meditations work?
My meditation, because my brain is so busy, I don't do meditation where you sit alone in a room. I do a lot of active meditations. And what that looks like for me is my body physically is moving, doing something, and I have like either frequency tones playing or something else going on. Nothing with words, because if it's words, it's going to distract me. I'm trying to listen. But some kind of tone or frequency. And I do this like in the morning when I'm getting ready. When I'm taking a shower and getting ready, I have frequency playing and tones playing and all this stuff. And I'm getting visions and stuff coming through like when I'm in the shower. I get out of the shower, I do my normal stuff. I have one of the ways I talk to my guides is I have a playlist. Part of my clairaudience is that music really affects me. And if I hear a song that gives me that full body feel, I will Shazam the song, put it on my playlist. In the morning, part of my meditation is I open that playlist and I close my eyes and I say, tell me a story. And I hit shuffle. And the first 3 songs that come up will give me an indication of how my day is going to go based on how I feel.
You're like giving yourself your own patterns to you're giving yourself something to respond to.
Yeah.
Which is
really cool.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think a lot of people think that they're waiting for someone else to give them the tool. You have the tool. You just have to figure it out. That's all it is.
And there's a certain amount of like effort you have to put into it to set up the tool. Yeah.
But I love that you like created your own system.
That's a fun system.
That works for you.
It's so fun. And the songs cycle in and out. And I don't just put songs on there that move me in a positive way. If I hear a song that makes me profoundly sad or makes me feel some profound emotion, I always put it on there because you can't just be biased against anything bad. You're going to have days that aren't great. But for me, this is kind of giving me insight. Okay, you're going to have a day that's maybe not feeling so great, but it's going to end up on a good note. This is the last song that came through. Try to, push through. It's going to be all right, I
mean, this is funny to me because you're essentially using your playlist like someone would use tarot cards, where it's like just just a media. It's a form of divination.
Yes, absolutely. And there's so many different ways you can do that, so many different ways. My favorite thing that ever happened with that playlist, though, is I was having one of those days where it was just kind of crappy day. and I was in the shower, and I get out of the shower, and the second I stepped out of the shower, that song "Step Into My Power" came on, and the first line is, "I stepped out of the shower and stepped."
Oh my God.
And I was like, okay, I hear you, you know?
Yeah.
That's so cool. Oh man.
So this makes sense because you call yourself an energy alchemist, and like that's just like what you're doing all the time. You're like kind of taking different things and making meaning and like shifting your energy and Right.
So that term comes from the old world meaning of changing lead into gold, right? Taking something dense and perceived as worthless and turning it into something valuable.
Mhm.
The way I work is when I have a private session with someone, I rarely use my tarot cards. It is all about conversation because as a channel, I work best when we talk. As you've seen through this whole thing, I just open up and let whatever needs to come out, and it usually takes us in the direction we need to go.
Yeah.
I think people sometimes come to me and they want me to give them the answer to the question, but the problem is that doesn't give you any empowerment. I want you to understand that you can figure out the answer to the question. You just need the tools to do it. And, there's nothing, my most favorite feeling in the whole world is sitting with someone and talking them through something and seeing the look on their face when they have that moment of recognition. Oh, I get it. That's something I'm constantly chasing. That's what makes me happy. That's why I'm doing this because I love that moment of empowerment. But I'm never going to just give you the answer because there's no value to be gained from that. You've got to see your own strength. So I think people sometimes come in and they want me to just read cards. It'll take me literally 5 minutes to read cards for you. But if you want to have a conversation and want to get into something deeper and figure out why you're doing the things you are, that's kind of where the energy transformation comes in and the modulation of your frequency and all that sort of stuff.
There's such a bigger difference to doing that because the people that are wanting like a reading and just tell me how I feel or tell me what's going on in my life, they're going to just kind of keep seeking more of that. Well, okay, got it. Like,
it's part of the problem.
Right. Until they find someone who tells them what they want to hear. That's how it tends to work. Yes.
Right.
But that's just once again like sacrificing your own sovereignty for someone else's system and like a different set of rules that you want to live within, right?
Right.
Would you argue that like everyone is doing their own form of divination and alchemy like all the time? They just don't know what they're doing naturally?
Yes and no. I think for most people, when it comes to alchemy, when there is the feeling of discomfort, they stop because you have to push through the discomfort to get to the other side, right? Mm-hmm. And for most people who are unawakened, I hate to generalize, but for most people who are not super self-aware, when they come up against a challenge, when the challenge comes to the point of making them personally uncomfortable, they back away from the change required to push through that, right?
Yeah, totally.
People who are awakened tend to be more willing to push through the challenge because we have learned things like the closer to a manifestation you get, the bigger the shadow attached to it is. You have to push through that shadow before you can embody the thing you want. And that has to do with frequency. If you're holding on to a belief that you can't ride a bike, you're never going to be able to ride that bike until you tell yourself you can do it. And that's a matching of frequency.
By the way, I really love the way you use Shazam because I use Shazam to track songs and groups that I hate. If you look at my Shazam, I'd be like, I'll be at a restaurant and be like, this song sucks. And I'll Shazam it. I'm like, oh man, now I know who to blame.
I started, music has always moved me. And it's something interesting. Both of my children, I think it's called synesthesia. When they listen to music, they're both musicians. And when they listen to music, they see colors. And they did not know that wasn't normal. They thought everybody saw that. It's kind of like someone who's colorblind. Until you tell them they're colorblind, they don't know the world doesn't look like that. I was sitting next to my daughter at an orchestra concert. She plays violin, and we're listening to this orchestra. And she made some offhand remark about how beautiful it was. And I'm like, yeah, it is really beautiful. She goes, I love that color. And I'm like, what? She's like, I love that color. And I go, what are you talking about? And then she started talking about it, and it helped me realize that we all access these energies, these frequencies in so many different ways.
Yeah.
It's just an individual thing. For her, she sees color. For me, I get chills and goosebumps in my body and all this stuff, but we're both being affected by the same piece of music, just translating it differently.
We don't have time for all this, but when we talk,
Are you opening a new?
I'm trying not to, but I just want to, because I want to make sure she has
You're
a second.
good at this.
I want to make sure she has a second to chill before a client. But you talked about that vision that you had where you saw the earth split in mitosis, like a mitosis kind of thing. Help me square this. Like, what does this mean when we talk about like the earth or consciousness splitting or something? Is that how it comes about in 3D? Someone's not going to want to talk to you, or is there some kind of big thing that supposedly is going to occur?
Well, I don't know. The short answer is I don't know, but
Yeah.
my intuition is no, it's not a big event. 5D is not somewhere you can live. People need to remember that. You are a multidimensional being. You live on all levels all the time. You have a 3D body, you have a 4D mind, and you have access to the 5D possibility. You are constantly moving in and out of this. So the idea of moving to a higher timeline, that's a misnomer. You're not moving to 5D. You're moving to a higher timeline for you, right? And what that means, what's happening right now is we're seeing a divide in the collective between people who are awakened and people who are not. And for a long time, those two timelines have very much mirrored each other, but we have reached a point where they're starting to do this. And it looks like on one side, and it's not, people ask me all the time, is it about being a Republican? Is it about being a Democrat? No, it has nothing to do with it. Yeah. Only to the fact where on one side, on the unawakened side, you will see people who are very mired down in their own perspective. I am a Democrat standing over here refusing to see your side. I'm a Republican standing over here to see your side. Neither one is right, but the refusal to see or to accept that someone else's opinion outside of yours is valuable is part of the problem. Yeah. On the awakened collective, you have someone who says, I'm a Democrat, this is what I believe. What do you believe? You have someone who says, I'm a Republican, this is what I believe. How can we work together? That's what that feels like, right? Mm-hmm. So what's happening is you're getting people starting to conglomerate onto either side. So you will have some friends who suddenly don't come around so much anymore. You don't hear from them, not because you cut them out or they move, they just aren't there so much anymore. And it's because your frequency is no longer harmonic. They're sort of dissonant against you. So they naturally, like dish soap and dirty water, will naturally move away from you. But you will also attract new people to you, people who are curious and more aligned with what you're doing. And this is what it's meant by the dividing of the timelines. It's not necessarily there's going to be a brand new earth that we're all teleported to, which would be nice, but that's not going to happen. The idea that you are finding yourself more and more grouped with people more in alignment with you. So for a lot of people who are awakening, there's a big feeling of a pull to physically move. I feel it. A lot of people I know feel it. I just don't feel comfortable where I am anymore. I have this feeling of wanting to be more near the coast or more near wherever. And
we're literally in 4 months we're moving to the coast of San Diego from.
Oh my God, I'm so jealous. That's where I want to go. So that's what I'm saying. But a lot of people are feeling that. And Bashar says this, and I 100% agree with him, that what's going to happen, it's not that these other people are going to disappear. It's they won't affect you as much because you're going to be living on the coast of San Diego in your bubble of people who align with you and choices you make that are good for you. And those people who are stuck in struggle will stay where they are. It doesn't mean that stuff isn't happening in the real world, but your attention to it is what brings it into your timeline. So like the bowling shoes, I completely forgot about that until he brought it up, and then it brought it right back into my timeline. And now I'm thinking about it and returning it, pulling it right back here. The same thing with politics and all the stuff going on. I don't ever listen to the news. I will not listen to the news. It's so crazy. But I still know enough about what's going on to keep me updated. I don't need to know the details. I can do nothing about it. Yeah. And the sooner you recognize that your anxiety is being fed by a feeling of not being able to control something you literally cannot control, it helps to dissipate that a little bit. And you feel yourself being drawn towards things that feel better, careers that feel better, people that feel better, locations that feel better.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
I'm always trying to, because there's no shortage of people on like the internet who are telling us that like any day now the aliens are going to come and take half of us. It's going to be crazy.
You know what? Maybe, but I don't think so,
Yeah. But then I'm always like, the way I've distilled that is like, okay, listen, if these like, the galactics and stuff that people are interacting with, if they are existing on an energetic level, they're telling us readings from an energetic level, and we manifest things here in a very 3D slow mannerism. It's like Congress. Like Congress is 20 years behind everything that we need, right?
We're going to go with like 30, 40. Okay. We're going to need to back up a little bit on that one.
That's going to manifest very slowly here.
Right. Well, and it comes down to the idea of frequency. I hate to interrupt you, but the idea of frequency, right? Things are all in the 5D. We're moving very fast. Frequency, all of possibility is here. To bring it down into probability, you have to bring it down into 4D, which is time. So it has to go from this to this. And then as you process it through time in your mind, it goes from this to this because 3D is heavy. It's a heavy environment. You cannot take all of this. It gets compressed to come down and manifest in the way that you've made room for it to. You know,
right. That makes all the sense.
Yeah.
As once again, I'm going to say it. The listeners have heard me say it a lot. Time is a joke, but it's our condition.
Yeah.
Here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Your mind is where time lives.
Yeah.
Your mind can travel forward and backwards in time. That's the only piece of you that can.
Right.
But it's also
so true.
the dimension in between all possibility and 3D reality is you have to process it through your mind, which is where time lives. The reason we incarnate is because in the 5D, there's no time. Nothing ever changes. If there's no progression of time, there is no progression, right? So you incarnate into 3D so that you can experience the progression of time and therefore go through growth. Otherwise, if you can't produce that movement of time, you cannot grow. And because we are quantumly entangled with our higher self like this, everything you learn here, they learn at exactly the same time. So that's the purpose of this physical incarnation is to learn and grow. You're not here to save anybody. You're not here to save the world. You're here to figure yourself out. And as a side effect of that, you help other people.
Oh,
time is the canvas on which we are painting.
That gave me that helped. I'm going to be chewing on that for the rest of the day, I think.
Listeners, Lauren's brow is furrowed.
Deep in thought right now.
I can see the neurons firing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That helps me. Okay. Thank you.
That's what I mean. Like sometimes you just need an explanation anchored in something you understand so that you can pull down the bigger understanding.
Yeah. Because my brain wants to go, when I start having those existential freakouts of like, but why? And like Frank's like, calm down, Lauren. It's that kind of thing where I'm like, but why do we need to come into these human bodies and like, but that's such a great explanation for me.
Right. There's no change without progression of time. Otherwise it just exists. So in order to grow, to learn, to expand, you have to experience change, which is the element of time, come down through it to a 3D body.
Fantastic. You explained something kind of similar, but you said it in a very abstract way.
Yeah, I'm learning right now that it went over your head. That's okay. This is Erin's job. She's great at it.
You were like, we are a reflection of time or something. And I was like, I don't know what the hell you're saying, so I'm going to move on.
Sometimes Lauren will be like,
very concrete, like visual. Yeah.
That was.
We're painted on time. I'm like, what the fuck are you saying, Frank?
Listen, sometimes I have something really weird and big to say, and I have to say it, but I know I have 2 sentences.
It's not for me.
I have 2 sentences of tolerance from Lauren, and I'm like, I gotta figure out. Okay, and I'm like, time is a painting, and then I walk away. So.
You're dropping just little bombs of provision right around every. Very profound. Here you go. See you later.
Yeah. Then Erin comes over and says something
better. Yeah.
And I go, oh, now that makes sense. And he's like, God damn it. Oh my God.
Okay. All right. Erin, tell everybody where to find you and your services and all that stuff, because this has been such a nice conversation.
And follow Erin on TikTok because we do.
Oh, yeah.
We love it.
I told you before we started, but I haven't told the audience. I literally have been starting my day with Erin's TikToks like for the past like month at least, and I have no plan on stopping. So,
yeah.
Well, hopefully TikTok is still around. We don't know what's going to happen to TikTok.
I'll follow you over there. You're good.
Yeah.
So I have a website. It's just consciouslyerin.com. And through that website, you can book a private session with me, which comes in 30 or 50 minute increments. It's not tarot card readings. It's a conversation, but you can get a lot done in that time. It also will link you to my Patreon channel, which is where I'm building a conscious community. I host classes, workshops. I put up lots of articles that I write. I make posts about connections between science and spirituality. I use Patreon a lot like most people use Facebook. And my fun thing that I'm doing right now is I'm a writer. I've always been a writer, and I'm writing a serial novel, and I just put the first chapter out. So each month you'll get a new chapter of this novel that's out. This was a story that came to me in a dream.
Oh my
gosh.
This
is a dream that I'm just writing out. So
that's amazing.
That's awesome.
Hey, you know what? Yeah. That's how the Twilight Saga got started. So I'm sure yours is better.
So I have my Patreon channel is, you can find it through my website. On there, I have Professor Brown Breaks It Down. That's a class that meets once a month where we talk about metaphysical things. It's run like a college classroom. You have reading assigned, you have discussion post boards, you have all kinds of stuff. Then we have the Soul Quest Book Club. That is a self-guided life coaching program that I wrote myself. It's a book that I wrote. It is a self-guided life coaching program because I want everybody to be able to do it. And what the book club is doing is we're meeting once a month to talk about each chapter as a group. How did you feel? What came up? What did you work through? I'm not leading, I'm just facilitating this. And then we have I call it a town hall, where once a month I go live on Patreon, which is kind of like being live on YouTube. And I'm just going to answer your questions as much as I can about whatever's going on in your life. I'm going to sit in my channel and just embrace whatever comes through. And there's that, not to mention all the written material that's on there. So it's kind of like a library. But you can find that through my website, which is consciouslyerin.com.
Erin, thank you so much. And thank you for making my mornings better in general.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye, guys. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Visit clairvoyaging.com for merchandise or to access free resources to help you on your spiritual journey. Subscribe to our Patreon for more content or join for free to chat with us. Clairvoyaging is a fiscally sponsored project of Fractured Atlas, a 501c3 charity. Make a tax-deductible donation to support our mission to foster understanding, respect, and curiosity for diverse spiritual belief systems. Clairvoyaging is a production of Wayfeather Media.